So let's talk about the thing that people just inherently trust the most, these scientific truth machines. We're told that if the number on the screen, when it goes bippity boppity boop and it comes out and says 0.08, 0.08, you're guilty of DUI, end of story. Now that number, it's a mathematical projection. It's not a perfect reflection of your body. And in these type of cases, the stakes could not be any higher. What if I told you the devices police use are deeply flawed? They're subject to human error, and they land innocent people in jail all the time. There's a lot of scientific jargon behind it. Yes, it's true, and we can go through some of that, okay? But specifically, in New Jersey, over 20,000 convictions were called into question after a 2018 ruling from the New Jersey Supreme Court, all because a sergeant skipped one critical calibration component during a semi-annual maintenance service in October 2015. In Massachusetts, almost a decade's worth of test results were withheld because of a machine error. The Massachusetts courts ultimately determined that even if the device can produce reliable results, the state office responsible for certifying and supporting these machines repeatedly failed to follow proper documented procedures and then withheld material records from defendants and courts for about 8 years. These aren't just technicalities. They're systemic failures that cause people their freedom, their jobs, and their future. Now in Florida, we use the breathalyzer machine called the Intoxilyzer 8000. Again, sounds so fancy. Reports have shown that these machines, they short circuit and literally smoking on fire during tests. Instead of fixing the tech, the manufacturer once suggested drilling holes into the unit to let it smoke out. Florida judges have even thrown out results because of poor oversight and undisclosed issues. So let's talk about how these machines actually work. They assume that they're measuring what's called deep lung air from your diaphragm. What if you have acid reflux or GERD? Conditions like this can bring stomach vapors into your mouth, causing a false positive. What if you're on a keto diet? Your body can produce chemicals that certain sensors can misread. What if you use mouthwash or certain breath mints on the way home? What if you have dental appliances? What if you have a built-in permanent retainer? What if you have Invisalign? A lot of the time, police officers, they're not looking the way that they're supposed to for these dental appliances. Now, cops are supposed to observe you for 20 minutes before a breath test to make sure that you don't burp, regurgitate, throw up. But in the real world, these protocols are often rushed. Now, what happens most of the time is they're supposed to watch you, but they'll be sitting there on their computer typing up their police report, and you'll be sitting there. But they're not watching you. You're just near them, right? You're in this room 15, 20 feet away, and they're just typing away. They're going in and out. They're doing their thing. And they call that the 20-minute observation period. We've been able to get cases dismissed because of that. But you might think, Adam, I'll just ask for a blood test, right? That's the gold standard, right? Well, again, not so fast, my friend. In another video, I'm going to dive deep into how blood tests work. Now, in Florida, they're mandated in only specific, usually violent or dangerous scenarios. And I talk about the 3 key things you need to understand as to why a blood test won't magically solve all your problems. Be sure to check that out in another video. But essentially, blood tests are only as reliable as the handling and the paper trail. If the chain of custody is sloppy, the storage is poor, it creates problems. We've had many situations with problems. Many situations, well, guess what? The police or the nurses that they're using to take your blood, they use an alcohol swab to clean the area before they take your blood. Okay, well, should that be used when we're measuring for alcohol? No. But do they still do that? Well, oftentimes, yes. I've had cases before where the blood samples are stored in the refrigerator at the police department waiting to go to the medical lab. And guess what? There's a power outage. There's no backup. They show up the next day and whoops, the fridge has been off for 12 hours. Can that mess up things? Absolutely. Now, one key thing with either a breath or a blood test is they have to be able to prove what your BAC level was at the time that you were driving. So we're not talking an hour and a half to 2.5 hours later on a breath test. We're not talking an hour and a half to 3 or 4 hours later on a blood test. And not so much on the breath, okay? But on the blood test, they're going to use what's called retrograde extrapolation. They're going to try to figure out what was your BAC level at the time you were driving. Because you know what? It doesn't matter what it was an hour and a half to 4 hours later. It only matters what it was at the time you were driving. Now understand, your breath, okay, or your blood, the alcohol amounts in your breath or your blood, might be increasing. So you might be under the legal limit at the time you're driving, and then you might be drunker or have a higher limit an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours later. It happens quite often. It all depends on your body's chemistry, the absorption or the elimination rate, all of these scientific things. But unless they're asking you the questions of what time was your last drink? How much do you weigh? Obviously knowing if you're male or female. What did you eat, right? Are we talking heavy carbs? Are we talking only protein, right? They can do the best they can by guessing on those things. Again, it's assumptions and estimates, but without them doing real physical testing of you and your body's ability to absorb and eliminate alcohol, it's still all guesswork, all guesswork. So when they're asking you these questions, you might be thinking that they're innocent and harmless questions. Well, they're not. They're asked of you in order to set you up. So in order that they can take that information and hire an expert witness and use it against you. You need to know and understand. So here's the bottom line. A DUI stop is not a conversation. It's a case being built against you. The roadside questions, they're designed to get you talking. The field exercises are designed to make you look unsteady, make you look drunk and stupid. And the breath machine is treated like science, even though it's junk science. It's only as good as the people, the protocols, and the paperwork behind it. And again, in other videos, I break down all the problems with this machine, these machines, the Intoxilyzer 8000. Watch that video as well, because when you see it, you're going to go, holy cow, I had no idea that this was complete BS. So to recap, here's what you say. Be polite and calm. You only tell them what the law requires, right? Which is you give them your license, your registration, your insurance, okay? You tell them, look, officer, I'm happy to answer questions with my attorney. Otherwise, no thank you. Short, sweet, no thank you, period. Remember, field sobriety exercises, they are voluntary, which means you can say no. There is no legal penalty for refusing these field sobriety exercises. Okay, when you do, you're going to get arrested. But guess what? You're going to get arrested whether you do them or whether you don't do them. So better to not do them. And then last, refuse consent searches. If they ask you to search your car, you say, I don't consent to any search of my person, my body, my vehicle. Okay, job is simple. Just be polite, give the required documents. No, thank you. That's it. You're going to go to jail. Live to fight another day. You need to call the best DUI defense lawyers immediately, because you only have 10 days to save your driver's license. Of course, we've talked about that in many other videos that we'll link to this as well. But understand the right lawyer knows how to navigate each component of the DUI case to protect your driver's license, your future, and your freedom. And in the next video, I'm going to show you so you can see for yourself how cops really use these field sobriety exercises to gather evidence. If you're interested, here's a link in the description for my free guide, How to Survive a Florida DUI, so you're never caught off guard. Your rights are your only shield. Use them, and I'll see you in the next video.